Now, in a week where Facebook took down pages and photos making jokes about violence against women, I thought it was an appropriate time to discuss a controversy about rape jokes that's been raging in the comedy community for at least a year. My first guest is a comedian who doesn't hold anything sacred. He makes fun of cancer, AIDS, and even his own passion for getting peed on. He's a no-hold-barred comic who thinks nothing is off limits. Please welcome Jim Norton, everybody. Jim Norton. And my second guest is the woman who literally wrote the blog on what's wrong with rape jokes. She's called out everybody from Louis C.K. to Daniel Tosh, and now she's ready to put Jim on blast. Please welcome Jezebel staff writer Lindy West, everybody. Lindy West. So, thank you both for coming for our first edition of Comic vs. Feminist.
And thank you for mentioning I like to be peed on. I wanted that in the intro.
It said so in your writer. You don't read your writer?
Yeah, no, well, I drank it backstage.
So Jim, just getting off the bat, do you think that comedians should be able to say whatever they want to say without any repercussions?
Well, I mean, if you're trying to be funny, I think. I mean, everybody knows the difference between saying something, like Michael Richards said something in anger. And reasonable people can sense when you're trying to be funny and when you're trying to be angry. So if you're trying to say something funny, yeah, I think like Matt and Trey said from South Park, it's either all okay or none of it's okay. Like you did some very funny stuff on the teapot and Hitler.
Oh, thank you.
It was great.
Thank you.
But there are people who associate Hitler with some really bad stuff. So
what? My writers, get out here! What the hell is that?
But you know what I mean? It's like if we go down that road of, hey, don't make fun of this, don't make fun of that, well, then people have a very legit argument to go, well, don't mention Hitler in any context, because there's never humor. So I'm just not comfortable going down that road. I just think as long as you're trying to be funny, you're okay.
And so I ask the same question to you, Lindy. Do you think comics should be able to say what they want without any consequences?
Well, first of all, I think that question is dumb.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Because...
Good start for me. Good start.
Yeah.
Hey, this is comic, feminist versus comic, not this comic. That one over there.
So sorry. No, because everything has repercussions. So if you're talking about legal repercussions, yeah, I do not think that comedy should be censored, and we're not here to talk about censorship, and I'm pretty sure we agree. What I'm talking about is the kind of repercussion where you choose to say something that, like, traumatizes a person who's already been victimized, and then I choose to call you a dick, and that's the repercussion. Like,
all right. So how do you feel about dick repercussions?
I totally agree with you, and she's not calling me a dick, by the way. No, I agree with that, and I have no issue with something you wrote. Like, if you think that somebody sucks for what they said on stage, you should blog about it. You should write about it. As long as a person isn't calling for somebody to get in trouble for an opinion or a joke, I have no issue with somebody calling out a comic and going, hey, I think you suck for doing that, as long as there isn't the asterisk which says you should get in trouble for doing that. But yeah, if we're not talking...
Sorry, what do you mean by trouble? Like, what is the trouble?
Well,
people are mad at you? Because people should be mad at you if they...
The trouble, I mean, pardon my interruption, is, like, I do Opie and Anthony, the radio show, so a lot of times the trouble people will do is if you're doing jokes they don't like, they begin to target your advertisers. Because the market should dictate whether or not people enjoy you. But they'll go to the advertisers and say, they're making fun of things that we don't like, so remove your financial support, which is a way to punish them. So that's the type of trouble I'm talking about. So if you're not asking for that, then I have no issue with you not liking something.
But if we didn't remove financial support and target advertisers, we'd still have Glenn Beck.
But yeah, but
I'm just saying, sometimes target the advertisers.
But as a comic, how do you not love Glenn Beck being there?
Okay, you've made a good point, Jim.
I mean, for comedians, the worse things are, the better it is for us. I mean, do you really want a president that's doing a great job and happy? There's nothing to talk about. But the faster things go down the toilet, like, ooh, good, this is going to be a great week.
That's world peace over a funny act. That's a hard choice.
Yeah.
You know, with 20 hours a week at Starbucks, you get benefits. I think about that all the time.
Hey, did anybody want to hear Mel Gibson leave a message for his wife? All right, honey, on my way home. Boring. You're a whore. Ooh, play it.
So, I mean, that's the question. I mean, other people say it's like, you know, are comedy clubs inherently hostile environments for women?
Well, they are dark basements full of angry men. So, I mean, just on a fundamental fundamental level, it's not an awesome place to be.
And people are drinking.
Yeah, people are drunk, and then there's just a dude on the stage being like, hey, wouldn't it be hilarious if everyone raped that girl? And then everyone laughs, and then, by the way, sometimes everyone does rape that girl, and that's a thing that really happens in the world. Like, I don't mean that the people in that club then, like, rally and they're like, I'm not doing anything. But I mean, like, in the broader scheme of the world, this is a thing that happens. And it's actually really trivializing to say that mocking and exploiting a rape victim's trauma to her face, because there will be women in that audience and probably men who've been sexually assaulted, is the same as, like, making fun of a thing. Like, it's not the same. It's not the same. And you're not...
Even if that thing is Hitler?
What do you mean? Like, you weren't being like, hey, wouldn't it be great if someone reanimated Hitler and then...
Wait a minute, let me write this down.
And you knew...
On next week's show, we will be doing
And by the way, it's not like you know that a third of your audience are like Holocaust survivors who like are also being like systematically silenced and told not to, don't talk about the Holocaust because no one wants to hear about it, and also you were probably kind of asking for the Holocaust. Like, that is not built into our culture. And so it's not just making a joke about a thing, it's contributing to a culture that perpetuates that thing.
And I understand why you would say that, but no, I disagree with that. And I understand the emotion behind not wanting people to mock certain things, but nobody ever just comes out and says, you can't say that because I don't like it. Because there's something kind of self-centered and self-serving about that. So it's an instinct to put in a reason why you shouldn't mock it. So people who don't like certain humor say, well, it contributes to a culture, or it contributes to an environment which perpetuates racial stereotypes or sexual stereotypes or this. The same as when religious people say, don't mock my religion, because what it does is it knocks down religion, which knocks down the family, which is bad for the structure of the country. Like, everybody has a reason. Nobody ever thinks, hey, you're saying something I don't like and I don't want you to say it. There's nothing I'm comfortable enough saying that you shouldn't make fun of. And I think as long as your intention is to be funny, I think that we all go into a comedy club knowing that. And there's a great difference between even a harsh rape joke and saying, all kidding aside, folks, rape is good. Like, we all know the difference between that.
Although that was pretty funny. You just see that happened there?
Well, you know
that section was like, nice one, nice one.
Well, the tap on the table made me look. I think that there's a difference, too, between a comedy club where you understand that we're trying to have an emotion pulled out of us, which is laughter, and standing up at the office party and going, to rape!
First of all, I've seen comedy acts that are not that far away from that. But I'm sure it's super comfortable and nice to believe that there aren't systemic forces that are affected by speech, but that's not true. And those of us who are affected by those forces know that that's not true. And so, like, I'm sure 60 years ago, there were some hilarious jokes about black people, and like, comedy was, hilarious, you guys. Like, comedy was way more overtly racist 60 years ago, and also, it's not a coincidence that life was more hostile and dangerous for black people. Not that it's great now, by the way. You literally think that's a coincidence? Like, you don't get to say that comedy is the sacred, powerful, vital thing that we have to protect because it's speaking truth to power, blah, 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 and then also be like, well, it's just a joke. I mean, language doesn't affect our lives at all, so shut up.
No.
Like,
comedy is not a cause of what happens in society. A lot of times it's a reaction to what's happening and a reflection of what's happening. And comic speech has never inspired violence. The only group that I think owes an apology for real to all of us is the press. Like, you know, take school shootings. The psychologists, FBI profilers always tell them, do not print the manifestos of these people. Don't show their photos. It contributes to violence. And they know it. The press knows this, and they do it anyway. Comedy has never contributed to, you know, two Jews walk into a bar, kill those kikes! It's never happened. Never. Nobody thinks that way.
We don't know that's not how the Holocaust got started. We don't know that.
6 million Jews walk into a bar. All right, maybe.
But I would just argue that, like, context is a thing, because I've certainly been in a comedy club where a comic who wasn't black told a black joke, and suddenly I felt like everybody looked over at me like, is that true, black guy? But I wasn't afraid of those people following me in my car.
Right.
They were afraid I would follow them to their car. Yay, oppression.
that was exactly what I'm talking about,
like
by the way.
Context means something, right? Like sometimes...
Sure, but let's be honest. If it's context, then I think the next time somebody walks through a museum and sees a painting that they find highlights or perpetuates a thought that they find objectionable, even a thought they should find objectionable, then they should take a towel and throw it over the painting. Or I think the next time that person goes to a movie and there's a rape in a movie, they should stand up and hold the board in front of the screen so nobody else can see it. Now, if you did that, people, like, look what happened to Giuliani when he tried he went after the Brooklyn Museum of Art. People were like, you fascist, you're going after art for something you don't like. But if you try to get mad at a comedian for telling a joke you don't like, people are like, you go, girl. And it's like, it's either all okay or none of it's okay. I understand why rape is an offensive, awful thing. No one is saying it's not. But sometimes comedy does trivialize what is truly horrible. The roughest set I've ever seen a comedian do is Joan Rivers. I went and saw her at the Cutting Room a few years ago. And I think she's one of the most underrated comics ever. And she did a brutal, and I say that with affection, a brutal set. She talked about 9/11, she talked about AIDS, and I mean it was rough. And she had zero respect for the boundaries of society. And we all knew why we were there, and we all knew that she was just taking everything that hurts us and everything that's sad and everything that's miserable and just turning it upside down and looking at it. And we all walked out of there the same as when we walked in. Nobody walked out thinking, hey, AIDS is hilarious. AIDS isn't sad and terrible. 9/11 is irrelevant. We all walked out feeling the same about those subjects. But the relief of comedy is it takes things that aren't funny and it allows us to laugh about them for an hour, and then we have the rest of the day to look at them like they're as horrible and sad as they really are.
I mean, don't you, what would you say to that, Linda?
Obviously, our opinions on how speech affects the world are very different. I don't know, if you don't believe that the pervasiveness of jokes where the comedian, by the way, isn't making fun of how horrible rape is, they're making fun of someone who got raped, often, like in this, you know, I mean, it's just a crutch, by the way. It's not even edgy at this point. It's hacky at this point.
I'm not going to defend bad comedy. I'm not saying you're wrong about that.
Like,
none of us are going to defend bad comedy.
No, but, and, like, the comedian taking on the role of the rapist in the joke, basically being like, hey, someone got raped, I did it, like, that's the joke. That, you can't tell me that that doesn't, first of all, contribute to women who have been victimized, who are sitting in that audience, and then are like, maybe there's a woman there who's wondering whether or not she should report her rape, and she's sitting there, everyone's laughing at the idea of how funny rape is, not in a way that is releasing any tension, but a way that is causing tension, tangibly, and tension that filters out into the world where we now live in a country where teenage boys think it's totally cool and hilarious to just put their fingers in the vagina of a passed out child and then videotape it and put it on the internet.
And people reacted appropriately. People reacted appropriately.
Really?
People who saw that are disgusted by that. I'm not talking about the way the school covered it up, but the fact that society looked at that and all of us are repulsed by it.
All of us were not repulsed by it.
The
a lot
majority,
of people, no, a lot of people.
But that's have
you been on Twitter lately?
Yeah.
It's kind of the worst thing ever.
I write LOL a lot. Two things about the rape joke. First of all, I understand what you're saying about someone saying, hey, I'm the rapist. And you could say, okay, that's a terrible joke, and I'd probably agree that joke sucks. But the point of that joke would be the misdirection of saying, no reasonable person thinks that guy is telling the truth. Nobody thinks that he's actually going, hey, I'm the rapist, and meaning, and I want to say, too, you're talking about, well, that by trivializing it, it's encouraging it. Your Twitter picture is Jeff Goldblum. Jeff Goldblum's first role was a brutal rapist in Death Wish. Now, I'm not saying anything against Jeff Goldblum, but
Are you here to accuse Jeff Goldblum?
Yes. but he picked up a blackjack and he said, you rich C, and he called her the C word, and they beat her to death in Death Wish. Now, we all understand, oh, that's an actor doing a role, but why as an artist do we give an actor a pass for convincingly playing a brutal rapist, but go after a comedian for making fun of something and mocking something? And, like, why do we allow an artist to do something convincingly that brings up, what's going to affect a rape victim more? Seeing that rape acted out properly, or hearing a dumb comedian make fun of it? I mean, let's be really honest.
Well, I mean, we don't have to choose between those two things. If someone went and saw that movie and they were offended by it, they are more than welcome to complain about it, which is all that I'm doing right now. It's just about accountability. If you want to make that product and stand by that, that's fine, but I get to call you a dick. I get to call you out.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, like, if we all agree that it's just a crutch and it's just like a hacky premise that people use because you want to get a reaction, you want to shock people, like, why does my vagina have to be your crutch? Can't you use something that's yours? Like, why do you have to come into my oppression and, like, use me for your closer?
First, you know what? I don't think we're going to top vagina crutch as the closer of this conversation. There's clearly more to discuss here. We will post the whole thing online. I'm just glad we get the conversation started. I'm a comic who's been accused of being a comic, and I'm a feminist who's been accused of being a feminist. I've been accused of being horrible at both. But I want to thank you for coming.
I think the best way to end this is for Lindy and I to make out for a little while in front of this entire crowd.
Maybe you and I make out for a little while? Lindy West and Jim Norton, everybody. Give them up. Catch Jim's stand-up special, American Theater, on FX in August, and read Lindy West on Jezebel.com. Give a round of applause, everybody.